Always thought that you were weak, but babe, you're wrong. Yeah, you better step into the light, just give it a try. Think that it's time you let that spark out. You've been hiding in the shadows way too long. And who cares if you might mess it up? You're stronger than the others think. And who cares if you might mess it up? Go ahead and shine, darling, go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine. You shouldn't doubt yourself, 'cause you're a work of art. You should know that you are perfect with those flaws. Yeah, you better step into the light, just give it a try. Know that it's time you let that spark out. You've been hiding in the shadows way too long. And who cares if you might mess it up? You're stronger than the others think. And who cares if you might mess it up? Go ahead and shine, darling, go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine, shine, darling, go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine. And who cares if you might mess it up? You're stronger than the others think. And who cares if you might mess it up? Shine, go ahead and shine, darling, go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine, shine, darling, go ahead and shine, my dear. 'Cause who cares if you might mess it up? Just shine.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to A Turn of Events, where we help put a positive spin on the future of your business. I'm Annette Naif, the CEO and creative director of Naif Productions. We are a strategic event production company based in New York City and Boca Raton. We specialize in corporate, social, nonprofit, and weddings. If you are a wedding event planner and you're looking to connect with colleagues of your own, please join us over at the Event Planner Society Facebook group. It's a great society of people. They're driven, creative, and passionate wedding and event planners. We bring together planners from all over the world who network, gain referrals, improve their mindset, and build their businesses. And I do a lot of training in there. So please join us over there at the Event Planner Society Facebook group. I'm excited about my next guest, Magi Fisher. I'm a little freaky about legal documents and things like that. I have a legal background, and I'm not a lawyer, but I do have a legal background. And can't even imagine planners who don't know stuff about legal, because we deal with so many contracts. But first I want to introduce, and we're going to talk all about that. Magi Fisher is the founder of Magi Fisher and the Artist Lawyer. She is a photographer, lawyer, and founder with a diverse portfolio of successful brands. Her career journey has taken her from photographing professional surfers in some of the world's most epic waves to earning a Juris Doctorate from Rutgers Law. In addition to photographing luxury weddings, overseeing a large associate studio of photographers and managing a contract template and resource digital shop. Maggie also provides legal counsel to some of the industry's leading artists and entrepreneurs through her law firm. And I'm excited, Maggie. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited.
I know. I'm a geek when it comes to this legal stuff because honestly, I just don't know how planners do it who haven't had a legal background, because there's so many tricky things with contracts and things like that, which we're getting into. But first, tell everybody how you went from photographing, how you got to your journey of where you are today. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I always wanted to be a lawyer. I always thought that was the career path that I would go. My mom was a judge growing up, and I grew up in her courtroom. And
there you go. There you
go. Yep. So I did mock trial in middle school. I was one of those weird mock trial kids. And then I studied political science in undergrad. I took a year in between undergrad and law school because my photography started taking off.
Yeah.
I started in actually the surf industry. So I traveled with the top female surfers in the world, all around the world, everywhere from like Tahiti and Chopu, Brazil, Australia, Mexico. We were all over for surf competitions, and I was working with a ton of brands doing commercial work in the surf industry. Mm-hmm. And my first year of law school, I photographed 30 weddings, and I knew that I needed a team if I was doing this while also in law school. So our associates team started to grow. I was pursuing law school. I was shooting weddings and traveling with surfers during what was supposed to be my study periods. And I from there, I clerked in the appellate division, and I had a job at one of the most prestigious law firms. And I ended up turning it down and deciding to go out on my own and just take a breather. My photography business was doing so well, and I wasn't ready to really I knew I would have to kind of shut that down if I was going to be a full-time, associate at a law firm. So, I took a breather, and about 6 months later, the Artist's Lawyer was born. And that is my hybrid of both career paths and both passions. And it started really right before COVID. And then of course, during COVID, so many people came to me for legal guidance.
Yeah, that was a scary time.
And I realized what gaps there were in the industry. So it was a good time to get started.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic. And, listen, photography is much more fun and creative than being a lawyer. It's good to be a lawyer, but it's a lot more creative than sitting in a law firm.
Totally.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, good. So, let's get started. So let's, when planners are first starting out, because we have a lot of planners who are just starting, and there's a lot of planners in my Facebook group that have been in the business for many years. There's all kinds of different time frames in there. So what are some legal things that they should put into place first?
Yeah. So, when you're first starting out, I usually love to go through the basic checklist of starting a legal entity. I think a lot of people get started and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna, it's sometimes such a natural progression, and they're just, oh, I'm gonna help with this person's baby shower. And then, oh, this person wants me to do their wedding. And you don't really the line is kind of blurred of when you need to become legit and open up a business bank account and form an LLC or some type of legal entity and separate out your personal and your business finances. So I think if you're getting into this career path and you're doing it, when you start actually earning income and you're charging for, you're creating invoices, it's time to set your business up legitimately and to form a separate legal entity, to create that separate business bank account, to get insurance for your business. God forbid something happens. And I have seen so many circumstances through the years with planners, and, there are there is risk and liabilities there with planning an event. So all of those things like the separate legal entity, business bank account, insurance are all really, really good foundational steps. I know we're going to talk about contracts, but, following from there too is, of course, having a legitimate contract with your client.
Yeah. And so you mentioned your templates, probably a good time to talk about question is, should they go online, Google contracts and templates and all that for wedding and event planners and use a template that's just somewhere out in Google land? Is that safe to do that?
I think that a lot of people end up doing that or finding contracts either from friends or on I've seen people find contracts on Etsy or Creative Market, and
there's everything on there now.
Everything, or Google, and just copying and pasting what you find on Google. But I mean, I'm here to tell you, and I think we're here now because there are legitimate legal resources out there that are specifically tailored to your business. And just like you wouldn't go to, a foot doctor for a cavity, you really should be going to an attorney, and not just any attorney, an attorney who specializes in your, creative business for your contract. And I see so many gaps, even unfortunately, even if you hire an attorney locally in your hometown, they're not going to have the breadth of knowledge specific to the wedding and events industry of how things work, what's industry standard, cancellations and rescheduling, and especially for planners, percentage based, and hiring vendors that are pre-approved by to maintain the quality of your event. There's so many things that just a regular attorney is not going to know, let alone Google.
Right. So when I hired a coach. So, I highly recommend that if you're starting out. I mean, I do that. So, but always get somebody to coach you along the way. And they generally in your coaching program will get their contracts and that. So I provide, I spent a couple $1,000s on my contract. But it was, I'm in New York. My business is based out of New York, and it's very strict here. There's a lot of, things you got to know. So for me, it was worth every penny. It started out 5 pages long, and now it's 14 pages long, because along the way, I mean, I've been doing events for 30 years, and I still, all of a sudden something will come up and yep, never saw that before. No, that never happened before, so, and especially with COVID, I mean, our force majeure clause in our contract, it was bouncing all over the place during that time because, every client had a different version of what it should be and what it should say and all of that. So they're not so much looking at those anymore. I pretty much have a pretty solid force majeure clause now in my agreements, which is, for those who don't know, it's a clause about, well, why don't you tell them what the clause means? Lawyer.
Sure. Yeah. Force majeure clause is essentially if either party or both parties are blocked from fulfilling their duties under the agreement by something that was unforeseeable.
Right.
The keyword is unforeseeable.
Yeah, right. Like a pandemic.
Like a pandemic. Yep. Yeah. But, right now we're seeing a lot with tariffs, and depending on when you contracted with your client, tariffs are not unforeseeable at a certain point in time.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how should someone protect themselves from that?
Yeah. So we have clauses in our contracts related to, change in market value, and, those shifts in hard costs and how those can be passed on to the client. So it's definitely something that, you can contract around, and you should, because, sooner than later, because, there can be pretty significant changes.
Yeah. You always have to think of things that might happen. It's crazy. That's what happened with the pandemic. Even now we put in, a clause for that. Even we're not in it right now, but who knows, something else could happen. So, you kind of got to word. That's why having a lawyer and having someone do that knows what they're talking about is super important. Okay. So what contracts do you recommend they have? And do you have any tips on creating them?
Yeah. I mean, so of course you're going to start with your client service agreement. Tips for creating them. I mean, the ones that we have in our shop are done for you. They're very simple to just plug and play, like your business information and, your state. And it's going to be very thorough in terms of, how you render your services and client expectations, responsibilities. Like, I am of the opinion that it's better to iron these things out ahead of time with the client and to have everything out on the table. For example, like with photographers, I know a lot of photographers only shoot engagement sessions on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays because they have events Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, maybe their days off. So
Right.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when they schedule engagement sessions. So if you can get ahead of that conversation and the client agrees to it in writing, it's not a surprise 3 months after they sign the contract that they can't schedule on a Saturday and there isn't then a problem in the client relationship. And the same goes with all different types of vendors in the industry. So many different facets of how we render our services. So getting ahead of those things of what the client can expect, what you expect from the client, it's all delineated almost like a guide or a manual to the relationship. So that is where I always recommend starting is with, definitely working with an attorney or getting a contract template from an attorney. You shouldn't get a contract template from anybody that is not a licensed attorney. And then from there, you could bring it if you have questions, you should bring it then to a local attorney or your business attorney that can help you like modify some things or
Right.
Update or edit from there. If like there's specific things that you're not quite sure how to word.
Right. So some of the things that we first have is obviously our client contract, right? We have that. And then we have an independent contractor agreement, which is a contract that we give, and you can probably talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Is a contract that we give for employees that are or staff that are working with us as an independent contractor, because I do hire a lot of independent contractors through obviously doing events, and then also a non-disclosure agreement. So if you can talk a little bit about both of those and the importance of having those, that would be great.
Yeah. So definitely, independent contractors or employees, you might have one or, both.
Mm-hmm.
An independent contractor or an employee agreement is going to outline everything from pay rates, responsibilities, expectations, confidentiality, trade secrets, non-solicitation, all of that. You can pack that NDA like right into that independent contractor agreement, just so it's like one comprehensive document with your contractors or with your employees. I oftentimes see for associates. So if you have, like lead producers or lead, associates underneath your wedding planning company, I'll often see like a yearly agreement and then a per individual event, 1-page document outlining the scope and that they're agreeing to that date and who they'll be working with, just so things are very, very crystal clear when you're specifically putting an associate on, an event underneath of your brand.
Right.
And then not in terms of non-disclosure agreements. So you can use we have an associate contract for planners. That's just more highly specific to planning. In a general independent contractor agreement, you could use that with anyone like a social media manager or an assistant, but somebody's like pretty integral, within your business, there might be some like higher level things that you want to have in the contract. And then you can, of course, have a general blanket NDA. Like we have one on file if we're consulting with somebody, like maybe like a new accountant or social media, because, you know, we have NDAs over some of our photos and the weddings that we've done. So anyone that you're sharing business information with, a non-disclosure agreement is essentially just confidentiality. But you know, an independent contractor agreement with team members is going to have a bit more than just an NDA. So like non-solicitation, protection of trade secrets, and things of that nature.
Right. Okay, great. So what's the different type of NDAs and when should each be used?
Yeah. So depending on what, like why the NDA is being presented. So I am in a niche where I get hired often by planners who are negotiating contracts for celebrity weddings. So I do a lot of NDA negotiations with celebrities, attorneys, or you know, ultra high net worth clients. And everybody has a different reason or thing that they're wanting to protect. And so I usually like to get to the bottom of exactly what that is, like what the client is, what the goal is, you know, is it, you know, they don't want the wedding shared at all, like nothing, nobody will ever find out. And it's always funny because clients request an NDA and then they want their wedding published.
Right.
So,
right.
You know, so it's really important to get to the bottom of what they're wanting to protect. Is it, you know, certain guests that will be in attendance? Is it photos of the couple until they're pre-approved? Because there's different ways of structuring. And a lot of times we like to get upfront permission for decor and, you know, certain different types of photographs that we'll carve out, or like a certain number of photographs we'll carve out, and have different levels and steps to pre-approval and like numbers of images and within like, you know, any certain kind of context. And you can have, you know, an NDA, you can have a copyright buyout where the couple owns the photos and there's no license to use the images. You know, and you can essentially just like carve out different elements.
Because they're all different. I mean, I've had, you know, a lot of times I've had brides who are in, you know, couples that'll say, I don't want my names out there. We don't want our name out there. So I will just do, if it's a photo of the back of somebody, like we did some photos just of the decor. Usually they're okay with that because that's something we want for our portfolio, right? We want something for the decor.
Totally.
So I will, that's important to us. So that I make sure in the beginning of this, when they start questioning, you know, all of the materials and stuff that we're going to be using, I'll make sure that we have that. So, and then, you know, just not having people in them is what's important, or the backs of people and stuff like that. So you just have to kind of, like you said, you have to kind of carve out what it is that they're looking to do. I think that's really important to remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, good. So, trademark is a very tricky thing. And I've heard certain things about trademark, but why don't you talk a little bit about trademark? Is it something that we need to do? How do we get it? What's the cost generally? Like what's the story on trademark?
Yeah. So I think this is such a neglected area, not just in the wedding and events industry, but just in general. So from the outset, especially if you come up with like a creative name for your business, like it's like, I don't know, honey and water, like I don't know, just if you come up with something that you feel is like original and creative,
right.
It's not only important to explore trademark for your protection, but you also really should do a search and clearance to make sure you're not stepping on anyone else's toes, and infringing on somebody else's copyright and protected name. And it's beyond what, you know, I think a lot of people think that they can do like a Google search and search themselves. But trademark and trademark infringement is beyond what people typically can just think to type in. So we have a software where we are able to run a search and clearance report, and it's going to pull from categories that are going to, raise a red flag and be relevant to whatever, that trademark is, or, the service or the item or product that you're looking to protect. And it's going to search for things that have the potential for the likelihood of confusion. So similar in sound or similar in spelling, or, maybe it's a little bit off. So sometimes it's things that I wouldn't even think, like the human, wouldn't think to type in and search and look for, but it's like something that it's like another word is in there, or it's like one word is dropped from the first letter is dropped from the first word. But it would be potentially confusing with a registered trademark. So it's really important to do a search and clearance report when you're starting a new business and make sure you're not infringing on somebody else's mark, because then you're building this entire business and investing into it, your time, your energy. And I mean, everyone knows branding and websites and social media costs a ton of money for your brand.
Yes.
And in the same vein, you're investing all of this money into your business, oftentimes for a name that you don't even own or know if you have the rights to use it. So I always recommend, I have a lot of clients who they'll come to me and they'll register their business, and then they'll start a new business, and they now know from the get-go to own that trademark. And essentially what that does when you have a registered trademark for your business is you register in conjunction with a service or a product. And the point of trademark is to protect against customer confusion.
Right.
So if there's anything that was likely to confuse a customer, so a similar Instagram name pops up and it's like your brand name and something is just a little bit different. If you have that trademark, you can shut that down and protect your brand. If you don't have that trademark, you cannot stop them from existing and continuing to grow their brand. So trademarks essentially freeze things where they're at. And if something already exists at the time of you obtaining that registration, you can't do anything retroactively. So it's why it's always better. I think a lot of people realize it too late because a similar Instagram name pops up and they realize they're losing leads, but you can't retroactively, just because you then get a trademark, go back and shut something down. So if you can do it from the get-go, as you're investing in your brand, it's protecting your investment.
Right. So I heard that you can use the symbol TM, you can use it, and it even without registering it or paying for it, and it gives you rights to that name. It helps give you rights to that name. And I know I'm not saying that right, but you know what I mean.
Sure.
So if you can explain that a little better.
Sure. So when you have a registered trademark, you can use the R symbol.
Right.
So that denotes a registered trademark.
Okay.
The TM symbol infers that you have a common law trademark rights. So everyone essentially has common law trademark rights, but they're just not strong. You have common law trademark rights in the limited area that you're using your trademark. So your geographical area and the specific way that you're however you're actually rendering your services, whatever that actually is, whether it's weddings and events or birthday parties or, however the narrow way that you're actually using the mark, you have common law trademark rights in that geographical area. But if you wanted to enforce having any kind of stronger rights and ownership of a name in relation to those goods and services, you would need to have a registered trademark.
Okay. All right. Good to know. I've been using it, and honestly, I have not trademarked. Now I'm knocking on wood because I hate to say that, but I haven't legally done it. And it's just because I just keep slipping my mind. It's not for any other reasons. I know it's It used to be like $750 or something to do it. I don't even know how much it is
It's
now.
not, yeah, it's like it's like 1,600 now.
So now it's like, okay, but it's worth it because
Totally.
you don't want to get down the road of I've built a huge brand and I would never, I mean, I use my last name. So my last name is in my, NAIF Productions. It's in my company name, but still there are, I checked on .gov sites for the trademarking and nothing was there. And along the way, there's some like Middle Eastern company that has taken over NAIF, and it's not productions, but it's producing or something. It's close enough.
Okay.
And I get tagged in social media sometimes.
Okay.
And that's how I found out about it. And it's very rare. It's probably a handful of times that it's happened. So it was just in another country. So what about trademarking with the US versus international, domestic versus international? Does that count, or what's the story with that?
So trademarking in the US, like having a US officially registered trademark, has strong international effect because where our trademark matters is US based companies like Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook. Right. And that's where you're filing like a DMCA takedown or, claiming like and enforcing those trademark rights.
Right.
You can also register it internationally if that's something that, you feel like your brand needs to do. If it's something that's, international and you want to police it against people in other countries. But if you're concerned about social media, having a US registered trademark is going to be sufficient.
Yeah. All right. Well, you and I probably should get together for that.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, there's different, we'll have to, last names are not like it's something that, we have to, evaluate. Last names are not always easy to trademark if they're a part of, the mark itself. So we have to look at like the rarity of the last name and all of that.
Yeah, it's rare, but so we'll have to just definitely look into that.
Sure.
So what is the difference between trademark, copyright, and patent?
Sure.
In the context of event planning.
Sure. Yeah. So a trademark is going to be your brand name. So NAIF Productions. It could also be your logo. A trademark is a brand signifier or a brand identifier. So logo, brand name, sometimes even a slogan if you have like a really strong slogan. For us, we actually have a trademark over all of our brand names, but also I have a slogan on my website, photos for the effortlessly cool. And I trademarked it because I was like, I like that. And I know someone's going to want to use that. So we trademarked it's iconic photos for the effortlessly cool. So you can trademark a slogan. Copyright is when you have protection over an original work of art. So an original creation, a design, a photograph, a movie, a book. You cannot copyright. Like it has to be like fixed and tangible. So an idea or something that is more fact-based, like a recipe or directions, like you can't copyright that. But something that's an original work of art, a creation.
Website, you can copyright, right?
Pieces of your website. I mean, if you're using somebody else's photographs, you'd have to license. The layout and format and like templates of websites, not necessarily, but like the copyright. Is copyrightable. You inherently and automatically have copyright. You have like the rights to copyright as soon as they're originally created. So you don't need to file anything to have a copyright over your work. But you would need to if you needed to enforce it for any reason. So if somebody was copying your website, just, copy or photos or anything like that, like design work, like especially in the events world, like mood boards and designs. If that stuff was, and oftentimes in event especially in like wedding planners contracts, we have language around copyright of design, especially when it comes to termination. Like, can the client, if they terminate, continue to use your proprietary design and materials designed for their event? Are they licensed to pass them off to another planner who will then be credited with the designs that you created? So parts of things we work through in those client service agreements.
Great. That's yeah, it's a lot and it's a little scary. I know you and I were talking before we came on, and I don't know how there are planners out there who don't. I mean, I have a legal background. I wasn't a lawyer, but I did contracts. And so I learned how to negotiate contracts, review contracts. And then through the years, because I've been doing it a long time, I know what clauses need to be like in the venue contracts and, looking at vendor contracts. We do deal with contracts all day, every day. It's crazy.
Totally.
So I feel like if you are in this, you really should, and I probably should do a class on this at some point. I think about this on occasion. You really should look into understanding what should be in your contract to protect your clients, and clauses. And again, you're not a lawyer and you should state that, but you want to let them know that, it's at this state, and now take this to your lawyer and have them take a look at it. And 9 times out of 10, no lawyers ever change anything up that we've done, because we're familiar with a hotel contract and what it should look like and all the clauses and all of that. And just negotiating the fees, the things that you can negotiate. There's a lot of things in a contract that you can negotiate, saving your clients, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that's valuable to them. You become very valuable to them. So I think just getting educated on that is a really big thing. I think about that all the time, is like, I don't know how planners who are just starting out, but that's something I teach. So I love this piece of it. And I am a geek when it comes to the contracts and negotiating and, getting deals. I learned that in my legal world. I had a CFO that helped me taught me how to negotiate. So that was something I picked up, and I never thought in a million years that I was going to use that in my business. So there you go. It worked out. Yeah. It's something good. Because you have to be protected. I mean, you can just take the contracts and send them to the client and have them deal with it. But I think that having that extra, that sets you apart from other planners. So just to think about that. So I do this, thank you so much. It's great information. And I know we don't want to overwhelm everyone, because legal sometimes gets people nervous about what they're doing. But before we go into this, why don't you share a little bit about how you've grown your associate team and what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah. So I briefly mentioned when I was in law school, I realized I needed a team to support me and fall back on as I, was pursuing law school. And I very quickly, we developed an associate team. We've had a team of associates for 10 years now. We have 12 photographers on our Magdalena Studios team, and all together they photograph around 90 weddings per year, and about the same 80 to 90 in portrait sessions and smaller events. So it's pretty high volume. We've developed lots of workflows and just behind the scenes tools and resources to allow us to really scale our team and grow. Everyone has, been on our team for like 6 to 10 years now. And for a lot of them, it's what they're doing full time. Like we are their full-time work. And it's super fun. Like it's, I love, it drives me to have a team that we have to support. I love having, other women on our team that have children and they're able to be creative, but be part-time and be home. And we have like our own little community of photographers, and we get together very often, and we're like a little family. So it's very rewarding. And it's also just a great, as I transitioned my business in different avenues, it's another great source of income to be able to, I think in like the events industry, it's really smart to have different sources of income.
I agree.
Not just, whether it's education or associates or some sort of product that you develop. I mean, I see it more often than not, that once you're in the industry for a while, you start to realize you need to diversify those avenues.
Yes, yes, for sure. I learned that too. That's why when I started my business 15 years ago, I had no idea I knew how to do events. I didn't know how to run the business. And so I was reaching out to find somebody to help me, get my business together, and nobody would help me. There was nobody coaching anybody back in those days. And I was like, I was in tears trying to figure it out. So I knew along the way, after my business was up and running, and I was, I always say, and it was running itself, which it never does, but little did I know that I would, help and teach and really help the industry and people starting their businesses. And I love teaching. I love doing it. So I'm always so surprised when people don't want to help others, because I don't know. There's so much work out there. There's no way we could possibly all take the work. So why not? And I want to teach planners how to price themselves right, so they're not charging, $5 when they should be charging $5,000. So, I'm giving that an example, but it hurts the industry. And so I'm always trying to help that and make sure that, and I don't want to see people get in trouble. And, I've had a couple issues that happened to me along the way in my business with workers' comp and stuff like that. So you always want to just kind of be aware and educate yourself on how to run the business, because that legal side of the business is very important.
It is.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we have to wear so many hats as business owners, and it's a hat that you don't have to wear because there are people who specialize in it. So, there's support that you can call in for assistance. There's people that you can turn to. There's resources out there who, and just resources in general that understand your business to a T.
Yeah. You listen, it's good to be knowledgeable in some way, and just so that you can kind of pay attention to what's going on. But, you don't have to be an expert in every single thing. And honestly, you're not going to have time. If you're running an event business, you're not going to have time to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Any business for that matter. Okay, great. I do this little lightning round. I hope you don't mind. It's a few questions. So who is someone who is inspiring you at the moment, and why?
Oh, I'm always inspired by Athena Calderon. She has a company called iSwoon. I love her design style. I'm very inspired by interiors and design. I also love Melissa Wood, who is a Pilates. She started a Pilates company. It's based in New York, actually, where you are. And I love her podcast. She does like very short podcast episodes on mindfulness and being present. And
that's nice. Melissa Wood.
Yeah. Melissa Wood Health is her company. But yeah, I love her podcast.
Oh,
it's
good.
A short little blip to get you through the day.
All right, great.
Yeah.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Ooh. Best advice. I love, and I always think about being a horse with blinders on in a race and not looking at who else is around you and what other people are doing, but just being focused on yourself and moving forward.
That's great advice. Yeah, because you can get, especially with social media now, you can get carried away on social media and see all the planners around you doing all this amazing work. But, just remember, it's social media, and it's not always what you think it is. So,
it's so deceiving.
I know. I'm trying to do more. I'm going to try to do more behind the scenes of like, this is what's happening while we're trying to get it to this beautiful point. It's a whole thing in itself. So I try. It's just, when you're in the middle of all the hairy-carry of setting up and putting the event together, I don't think, let me grab my phone and get on social media. That's not something I'm thinking at the time. So I do need to have someone doing that behind me and doing that, because it is funny. I know someone that does it now, and it's super funny. Okay. So, all right. So what is one piece of advice that you would give wedding or event planners just starting out? I probably know exactly what that is, but why don't you share that?
Connect with professionals and a community. So don't be afraid to, you don't have to do it alone. There's plenty of people and resources out there to support you. I know it's really fun to get swept up in the fun and the creative side and social media and what's pretty, but having that backbone and the foundation from the get-go is going to allow you to set up for success and continue to scale.
Yeah, that's super great. The foundation is so important, because I know many planners who just get in, like their sister got married and they're jumping in, and then they decide to start a business, and you just really have to get your foundation and set up. So I think that's very, very important. Thank you so much, Maggie. This is awesome. For all the information. How can everyone reach you? And we will put it in the notes so that everyone can see that. How do we reach you?
Yeah, my Instagram is just my name, Maggie Fisher, and you can find me from there, The Artist Lawyer on Instagram. We have a fabulous newsletter where we're always putting out really great content for, just staying up to date with like legal and behind the scenes things like the BOI reporting that came up this past year. And anything new that comes up, we're sure to report on.
That's great. And do you have templates? Is that where they find the templates?
Yeah, they can find them right there as well.
Great. Well, I'm going to go take a look myself.
Amazing.
Check that out. All right. Thank you so much. And we should get together for sure about the trademark, because I do want to.
Yeah, I'm always happy to help. I would love that.
Okay, good. All right, Maggie, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.